Thank you so much for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us.
I'm so excited to see you all. I can see the thousands of people in the chat. It's so exciting. I was going through and seeing all of the names, and I couldn't even get past the B's. So delighted to be with you all.
I know, and we're excited to have you kind of close us out today and really talk about the future of gathering and what that's going to look like as we close out 2025 and into 2026. So let's dive right in. Your work has helped so many of us gather with more intentionality and meaning. As we look ahead to 2026, what do you think the future of gathering looks like, both virtually and in person? Because we've had lots of discussions brought up today around there's this online component that's really important, but there's also this in-person aspect that brings this like glue, this magic to the online. So I'm curious what you think.
A friend and sort of someone who has shared questions with me is entrepreneur Scott Heiferman, and I remember he started Meetup, which is now I think they sold to WeWork, and I'm not sure what has happened since. But for a time, and some of you may remember Meetup, some of you may be Meetup hosts, but it was this radical idea, and I'm going to go past before I go future. But we kind of, history goes in cycles. Um, Scott tells a story about how the first time he ever met his neighbors was actually in the weeks after 9/11. And he came up in New York and basically like never met anyone on his block. And then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden there's a sort of like outpouring of just meeting his neighbors, and just like the norms change. And I'm a conflict resolution facilitator, and we often compare moments of conflict to like earthquakes, which is like there's this weird nebulous moment afterwards where like the norms totally shift and people don't totally know how to be. And it was in those moments where he decided to create Meetup. And the way he used to talk about Meetup is we are coming online to get offline. And he created this entire kind of digital platform where, if you're not familiar with Meetup, and maybe is your chat live? Is it going?
It is live. There's about a 30-second lag.
Maybe
Yes, it is live.
if you've ever been to a Meetup, or if you're hosting a Meetup, pop a one into the chat. Um, but Meetup famously kind of thought very deeply about what makes a group work and what makes a group sticky, and where and how do the groups that last really last. And if you were new to Meetup, it was this it, anyone can create a Meetup. It's an in-person gathering around a specific topic or shared activity. And I think so many of the lessons that he and the team learned from Meetup is still deeply true now. And I think one of the futures of gathering for 2026 is communities that both use technology to be able to connect in ways that you wouldn't otherwise be able to, but also to use technology to also get offline. And not seeing those two things as competitive, but actually to be in sort of interdependent relationship with each other. So I think that's one element, is particularly post. I mean, 5 years after, into the pandemic, whatever language you want to use. I think one of the things the pandemic did for us is by taking it from us, we began to see. By taking gathering from us, we began to see that that gathering is something that shapes us. And by taking gathering from us, we began to actually ask, well, where and how and why and when should we meet and who decides? And so I think a second element for 2026 is, as we still have a loneliness crisis, as our country, those of you who are in the US, as our democracy is fraying, it is imperative to meet in person. And I think another trend that we're going to see, that I feel super excited about, is people coming together, not around shared identities, but around shared activities and shared experiences. So like the group Reading Rhythms is an example that I love. I think it's so interesting. It's like three friends on a rooftop who are like, we should read more, but whenever we hang out, we just talk. What if we got together to read? And they, like great community builders, made it super specific, had a time boundary, helped, and said, maybe if we have this need, other people might have this need. And they launched these reading rhythm parties. If any of you are in New York, I think they're also in Los Angeles. Maybe drop a 2 into the chat if you've ever been to a reading rhythm party. But it's basically like, I think it's 90 minutes or 120 minutes. It's super structured. You bring a book, you read it yourself. It's often in a bar in a public space. It's 30 minutes where you just deep read. You're reading silently together with other people, with strangers. And then there's a prompt where you meet with one other person, I think for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and you share one thing from the book you're reading, right? Super interesting. There's like creative structured design. And so anyway, I think in 2026, we'll also see even more. I hope we'll see more specific, fun, joyful gatherings that are around shared experiences and shared activities, which actually allows for a lot of difference.
That's beautiful. Thank you for going so deep there. I agree. And I really want to double click or just highlight this note around not seeing the IRL and the URL in competition, but really seeing them as complementary. And we see it, we're an online community platform. And so there's like, oh, a lot of things are moving, in person. That's great. That's actually a compliment to the online community that you've built. So really encouraged to see that you're seeing that as a trend as well. A lot of our audience members and people that are with us live right now are building communities around a shared mission or an idea. I'm curious if you have any questions that you think they should ask themselves before they gather people to ensure that the gathering has purpose and resonance and just a pure focus of intentionality.
What is the desired outcome of this gathering? What do I want to have be different because of the way we convened? Like, I often think about gatherings as a potential to change people, right? We were talking about transformative gatherings. And at some level, that's taking people from a state, and then because of what happens, they're exiting, like, to a state. And so as you think about what will have been different because we come together, to work backwards from that answer. And then third, and I launched a Substack 2 months ago called Group Life. And every 2 weeks, I do a webinar for group lifers. And then one of those recent webinars was titled, Host a Gathering You Actually Want to Attend. And so I would say, do you want to attend this gathering? Like, do you want to attend this gathering? And if you're like, this is exhausting, don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of this is like, gathering well is a form of energy release, it's a form of energy creation. And so at some deep level, like, literally host the gathering you want to attend.
I love that. What about on the like, back to the transformation piece, are there any specific things that they can think through or design when it comes to delivering transformation inside of a gathering?
It's sort of thinking about one of the biggest mistakes we make when we gather is we assume that the purpose is obvious and shared. Oh, I know what a networking event is, right? You hand out business cards, right? And actually pausing and saying, what is the purpose? Why am I trying to connect these people? To what end? Am I trying to connect, entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs? Am I trying to connect grantees to funders? Like, who and what type of community am I trying to create? And so often, because we don't actually think about it, we don't pause. You can't even create transformation if you're not clear on what your purpose is. And so, for example, there was a woman that I knew. This was in the Art of Gathering. Her name is Elizabeth Stewart, and she was the head, I don't community director of a in-person community called Hub LA. This was years ago, and she wanted to create a community that felt authentic, where people really supported each other. And she also knew that often, if you didn't have any pop-up rules and you got, entrepreneurs and VCs in a room, it just feels like a meat market. And so she created this pop-up rule where she said, you can't, this a networking night, it's a community building night, but you can't talk about what you do, and you can't talk about what you're selling unless asked. And it totally shifted, and the transformation she created was actually a mental shift from seeing these as short-term transactional interactions, where it's like, I get my one shot, to actually, like, having them reorient to realize, like, oh, we're part of an ecosystem. How interesting, right? The questions that I might ask are different. The way I might answer a question are different. And so transformation isn't so much like fireworks, or like ice luges. It's literally like, what transpires? How do I want people to, like, think differently? Or what is a belief I want them to sort of put down because of something that they heard? because of, well, how do I want them, how do I increase the likelihood that they'll go out and vote, or whatever the case might be because of what happens in the room. So it's working back from a desired outcome and saying, how might they be different because of what happened here?
It also centers the interaction on creating a relationship and not creating this transactional, "What do you do? Here's what I do. Here's what I'm selling. Here's what you're selling," which kind of leads itself nicely into my next question. And it's actually a question that we've had throughout the summit today is how do we avoid being transactional? We wanna create these communities that feel alive, and we wanna avoid these transactional kind of traps that we can fall into with communities. I'm curious if you have some principles or even small design choices that can help virtual gatherings, specifically online, feel more connected and meaningful when you're not in the same room and you're not in the same time zone.
I mean, so many. And part of part of thinking about designing communities, designing gatherings is to really think about them as design choices. And so some of the most I have a newsletter I wrote maybe a year ago about what I find some of the most creative and helpful rules that digital communities have implemented to create the engagement and interaction that they want. And can I share a couple of them?
Please, I would love that. That would be great.
So again, so there's one that I learned about called We Are Child Free. Okay. So it's a global online community for people who are child free, meaning they don't have kids and they don't want kids. Quote, by choice, circumstance, or just curious to learn and connect with one another. Right. Great. Now these hosts thinking like the deepest, it's a digital community. They want people to really think about this choice, have conversations, but they were really smart. And they had a set of rules before you enter. One of their rules is we are not a dating site, right? It's like, whoa, that's really interesting. And part of what and you could basically see, and they were smart, like thinking 3 steps ahead. Who's coming here? I- People who are interested in really thinking about this pretty core decision that's core also to coupling. Like, oh, there's lots of other people here who have the same, right? It's like it could obviously sort of like just very quickly not turn into your question transactional, but in a way turn into a different type of interaction that they did not want because it didn't serve their purpose. Right. And so they designed for this. The organizers believe that if the space morphed into a dating site, the dynamics would affect what and how people post, right? The questions that they asked. And again, with no shade to dating sites, it's just being really clear on who are we and how do we create the context so that the interactions that we want are happening. Sometimes a really helpful rule is thinking about like 3 steps ahead of what guests, community members, whatever you want to call them, might post, and almost like protecting them from themselves. So one of the ideas I write about in the Art of Gathering, and again, I'm a conflict resolution facilitator. That's my craft. That's my day job of groups. And so which basically means I am trained in high risk gatherings, right? That's a different way of saying it. And so one of the things that we're trained in high risk gatherings is like really, really realize that the host has power. And one of our roles is to practice what we call generous authority, which is to use your power and also your ability to see beyond your guests to connect them to each other, but also to protect them from each other and to temporarily equalize them. Can I give one more example?
Yes, please.
So this is another example I love. This is from a Reddit site. So a Reddit wedding planner site. There's a subreddit. I mean, drop a 3 into the chat if you're a big Reddit Reddit person. Um, so really good rules in these gatherings, in these digital spaces, are also culture creating. And this wedding subreddit, one of the most popular subreddits on Reddit, and one of the most popular, basically informal websites in the country, um, is successful because it has thought about every possible thing that could go wrong when people come and are trying to get information and ask questions about their own weddings. And if you think about it, weddings are like the epicenter of culture creation, about identity, about judgment. Like they are full of conflict. So here are their rules. The organizers discourage members from treating typical weddings in their locale as, quote, the right version of a wedding. They ban the use of the word tacky. And you read this before you enter the site,
Mm.
right? Quote, it is subjective, not descriptive, and too often weaponized. Situations vary greatly, and there's no one sole arbiter of etiquette, the host explains. They don't allow debates on the etiquette of cash bars, understanding that people's assumptions tend to reflect spoken and unspoken elements of class and culture. And they basically are creating these rules to protect me from sticking my foot in my mouth. Right? They have thought, as you or your hosts of these communities, you are thinking, I promise you, 1,000 times more about this gathering or this community or this digital space than your guests are. And so at some level, like, creating a rule that helps a place not be transactional is protecting your guests from each other, in part to say, we're doing a different thing here, and let me help you be successful so that I'm orienting you before you enter the space. And some of that, one part of the thing I love about some of these rules is that they're super specific. They're not open to interpretation. They ban the word tacky, right? It's such an interesting choice. And so,
Mhm.
add whatever your context is as you start thinking about what is a threat to our purpose, and where and how can we set people up so that we're designing discourse that helps us focus on our purpose.
I love this too because it starts to design itself for psychological safety. Because when you step into this space and you set these guidelines and you have these rules and you're very clear on your expectations on how you communicate with each other, you're also telling everyone like, "Hey, this is a safe place, and here's how we've chosen to make it safe." And a lot of that has to happen, in my opinion, in the onboarding and in those first couple interactions with the community so that people know kind of the code of conduct or the mini subculture to being part of that community and keeping it safe and keeping it feeling secure, so that they actually wanna contribute too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you often say the purpose of your gathering should be specific and disputable. How might this principle guide creators and community builders today designing virtual spaces that actually transform rather than just inform? Meaning, sometimes you can get in this, um, I would say, like, it's a little bit of a trap to, I'm going to create a community and I'm just going to put a bunch of content in there. And then I hope people read it and ask questions and engage with it.
Right. When I think about, I wouldn't start by asking the question, how do I create community? I would scoot back even for, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? What is the purpose of of the thing I'm trying to do in the world? And then how do I bring together a specific group of people that might also share that question? Right. And so it's not everybody for everything. It's really deeply first actually looking in and saying, what is my specific and disputable purpose? And starting there. And if your gathering or your community is sort of for everyone, it's probably not for anyone. It's not really saying much. And so I'll go back to Meetup. One of the things I remember Scott Heiverman told me, this isn't the art of gathering, but he said, um, they started to grow enough where they had really interesting data about which groups are sticky, which last over time. And one of the things that they found, and then they created into the algorithm of their of like how do you set up a group, was the more specific to the group to a point, the more sticky it would be.
Mm,
So, and the example he gave me was hikers. It was like, hikers, okay, and there may be a bunch of people, but if you had LGBTQ hikers with dogs, right? There are these interlocking identities. And though that was one of the, I think it was a real group. That was one of like the stickiest, most interesting. It's like, I know, oh, okay, I got it. Like that's me or that's not me. And so to make yourself seeable, but to also really kind of have a thesis. Like, why are we bringing these people together? To what end? Why do I think this matters? Again, does this give me energy? I know in my own work, I wrote a book, The Art of Gathering. I've just finished writing my second book, which I will share soon. So much of what I think about for myself is first, what is my own craft?
mm,
And I stay close to my craft. I'm still a group facilitator. I still take clients that scare me. I still take clients in situations where I like don't fully know how I'm going to handle it to make me sharp because I am interested in the craft of facilitation. I think it's fascinating. I want to I want to always be better and better. But the second thing is, why am I building a community? Like to what end? And so then again, I thought, so then the next step is like, okay, I wrote the Art of Gathering and I listened and people were saying, well, can you, how do, is there a deep dive? Can you create a deep dive so that I can practically take these lessons and apply it to my leadership meeting or wedding? And so then but I listened, right? And then I created the Art of Gathering digital course. And then I had to really think about what is this thing? And then we had a thesis that people are going to take this course if they're actually and learn if they actually have a gathering they're deeply worried about, right? And so then the entire course is designed based on I have this leadership retreat coming up that I'm running. I have a circle I'm trying to start and I'm really super nervous about it. I have a wedding I'm trying to plan. And so every single decision I've made has come from a real need and then also my own interest, like, do I want to do this? Do I want to record a digital course? Do I want to put it out in the world? And then finally, with this group life on Substack, like I'm also a person trying to teach a skill and a craft and figuring out what is the right community and vessel to do it on. I
Mhm.
currently have found Substack to be an interesting tool that helps me teach in a retail level model, but I'm experimenting just like you all are. And so each thing is a tool, but help use the tools to help you both spend your time and use your gifts and your skills and what you want to build. And then also really always stay connected to like, what is the actual need? What is my community telling me? Where is there a gap? And how do you connect those two things?
I love that because it also kind of de-risks any kind of launch or new effort or new experiment because you are taking action based on things you've actually heard from your audience or in the market. You're filling a gap. There's a real need for it versus actually Ali Abdal spoke to this earlier. If it's just something that you enjoy, it's you typically a hobby. Whereas if there is a
Oh,
true, sense in the market of hey, people are asking for this, people are asking me for this, and I can create it. And there's that passion, where those two things intersect. It's really
it's a
powerful.
relationship.
Exactly, exactly. So I know that you have spent your career helping people gather with a lot of intention. What gives you hope right now about the ways that people are reimagining connection and community?
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, I think that the ways people are gathering and creating delightful conceits, hilarious conceits, gives me so much joy and hope. I on Instagram I share gatherings that just kind of literally make me laugh. It's just my name, Priya Parker, if you want to join in there and see it. It's like the Whitney Houston drum contest. Do you know what this is?
No.
So like someone came up with this like joke of like, the "I Will Always Love You" song, and she's like, "And I
Yeah.
will always," and apparently there's a famous drum solo, and like it's based on the timing of the drum. If you've seen this, pop a W for Whitney into the chat. But it's really hard to like get it at the exact same time. And so this, I think it was a school, again, like public contact. All of these people from like a 12-year-old to an 88-year-old are sitting there with a one drum and they just play the entire song. And then they try to get it at the same time and everyone laughs hysterically. And part of that, you'd be like, why does that give you hope? And it's like, because these are modern civic ways where people are coming together and having a laugh and realizing that strangers aren't scary and
Yeah.
having a shared context. There was a Philadelphia parallel parking contest. And like two friends literally started as a joke. I had a conversation with Austin Kleon on Substack about this. It's like there's some of the best gatherings start as jokes. Like, and it like thousands of citizens in Philadelphia are coming with their car to like see if they're a good parallel parker. And so much of yeah, I'm American. I believe in a multiracial democracy. I also know that like some of the most important elements that we need is to be part of a vibrant, joyful, funny civic life across difference. And I'm
Mhm.
so inspired by the many, many ways people are infusing joy into into spending time with one another. And I hope that there's more and more and more of it where we start realizing like we contain multitudes. We are trying to do something difficult in this society that has never been attempted before, which is to create a multiracial democracy. And hey, maybe there's other people who are maybe not like me, but are up for having some of these shared questions, and they're also really hilarious, and they got that Whitney Houston drum beat just at the right time, right? So part of what gives me hope is seeing people's humor and delight, and then gathering in ways that help people see each other differently.
Mhm. I love that. I love the emphasis on joy and the emphasis on, like, common connection. It reminds me of, I know you're in New York, the Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest in Washington Square Park. Like,
Exactly.
it was all over my TikTok feed. I was like, "This is hilarious." It serves no
Yes.
purpose, but it serves a big purpose, which is just
Yes.
laughing and bringing people together. It's like, "Who looks like and then they were like, "Oh,
Yes.
actually, Timothy Chalamet showed up," but they weren't quite sure if it really was him because it was so funny, and it is a
Totally.
way to bring people together, so
I've seen like the Steve, if your name is like Brian Smith conference, and like people go around like the 6'2" or taller conference. And it's like everyone is like tall, and then it's like, oh, it's such a relief. But these are all I think in modern society, there's so much there's so many ways that we don't share common gathering spaces anymore. We don't share the same church or the same temple, and so part of what something as silly as the Timothy Chalamet lookalike concept is, it gives us a temporary common hymnal
mm.
to come together and be like, we have this shared cultural context. Let's spend time together.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This was such a delightful conversation. I love hearing where you think community is. And I don't know about you, but I feel so much hope and so much lightheartedness after this conversation. So thank you for bringing that to the summit. I wanted to share a slide that your team had shared with me to make sure that we present so that, you have some things that you might want
Oh,
to
great.
share.
Great. Let's,
So let me just bring that up really quick.
I don't even know what this is going to look like. Let look at this. This is exciting. Um, Amazing. Okay, so I actually mentioned this earlier. I have this Art of Gathering digital course, and it's great for teams to go through to basically build a culture and a lexicon of language to gather well. And we've had thousands of students do it, but the most useful worksheet on this is called the Purpose Worksheet. And I wanted to share with your community with Circle here, a free purpose worksheet, so that as you're like, how do I actually figure out the purpose of my circle community? Or how do I actually figure out the purpose of my wedding or whatever gathering? Start here. And so I don't know if you can drop it into the chat, but if you go to priyaparker.com/circle, there's a bunch of resources there for you. The purpose guide is free. You can also text gather if you're in the US. But just start by actually just starting to distill and determine the purpose, and then go from there.
Perfect, and Katie is in the chat, she is on it. Katie from your team, she went ahead and shared the link to that as well, so thank you for these resources, we always appreciate it. People always love, like, ways to dig deeper after fireside chats like this, so thank you for providing that, and just thank you for your time and the work that you do that inspires so many to gather with more intention, so
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And good luck, y'all. I was excited to see all your intentional communities out there.
Awesome, thanks, Priya.